Recording is in. Talk about working with investors, working with absentee owners. All right, which is my absolute favorite source for all of you to work. Okay. Anyone want to guess why I love investors so much? Two main reasons why I love investors so much. Anyone want to guess?
Main source of buyers.
Hey, there's one. 25% of all buyers in the market today
Yeah,
are investors. That's one out of every
yeah.
four transactions
I've been paying
are.
attention to you, Robert.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I got one. One out of every four transactions is a buyer. So then when you factor in the listing side, it's about one out of every three total transactions are dealing with investors. So one of the main reasons I love investors is right now, what a great source of business. Absolutely phenomenal. Anyone want to guess the second reason why I love investors so much?
There's no emotion involved.
There's no emotion involved. That is true. That is true. It's just numbers, and we're going to get right and we're going to get into that, Sean. Absolutely. It's just numbers. And there's another reason why I love investors so much.
They often have money.
They have money. That is true. That is true. They also have money, right? Which is great. I love it. I love it. And this is all concluding to one of the main reasons I also love investors is there's so many angles to find a deal with an investor. All right. I could get one investor and I can come up with so many different ways to find a deal. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm glad all of you are on here. Great answers. All right. So as we go through this, if you have any questions, just unmute yourself or put a question in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that as much as I can, or you can just unmute yourself and have a ball and ask away. All right. Now today, I'm going to just keep it really simple today. You don't have to write anything down today. You can if you want to, right? In case something really strikes you. But I'm going to share my notes at the end. Okay. I'm going to share my notes at the end. But what I'm going to do today, I'm going to share my screen and I'm just going to walk through my notes. Okay. I didn't put together a PowerPoint for today. Today, I just have my Google Doc notes and I'm going to share these at the end. So you can simply pay attention, right? Because there's parts in this that I'm going to talk about that aren't in the notes, right? So don't just think, okay, I'm leaving. He's going to send the notes later. Nope, right? There are some valuable things, but I'm also going to share these at the end, all right? Okay, so the first thing I do want to cover, though, is the absentee owner script. So if you're going to prospect absentee owners or investors, you got to know what to say and how to say it. So in this document that I'm going to share with you is another document for the absentee owner script, which is this script right here. Everybody see this copy of absentee owner script? Can everybody see this? Nobody has their cameras on, so I can't see if it's a
Yes,
thumbs up.
yes, we can
Yes,
see.
Verbally
Yes,
say
yes,
something.
I have
Thank you.
my cameras on.
Great. All right. Perfect. All
Yes.
right. Thank you. All right. So here's a basic script when using absentee owners. I'm going to walk you through this just so you understand, again, how much value come with working absentee owners, right? So you go right into it. Okay, I'm calling with Century 21 Masters. I'm calling because we're working with a lot of investors like yourself who are taking advantage of the change market to cash out on their rental. Have you thought about that? Okay, so right away you're going into have they thought about selling their house, their investment property? Now, as you can imagine, if they say yes, just set the appointment. But if they say no, keep going. This is where absentee owners get to be a lot of fun. Because when you're not calling absentee owners and you're calling just your your neighborhood farm, you know, Robert homeowner, hey, are you interested in selling? No. Okay, you don't really have a lot of angles to go from there. They're not interested in selling their house. With an investor, you have so many angles. So right away, are you thinking about selling? No. Okay, great. Well, now they're not thinking about selling, which means they like rental income, right? Does everyone agree they like rental income? All right. So that means I'm going to play off of this. That's great. Sounds like you enjoy having that rental income. Since that is the case, have you considered exchanging this property for units? That way, instead of one rent per month, you get 2, 3, or 4. So I'm dealing with an investor. They're invested in the property. They're collecting rent on it. I'm asking them, are you thinking about selling? They say no, which means that they like the rental income. Okay. They like the rental income. So I'm going to see if maybe they want to get some more of that. So are you interested in selling this property, exchanging it for units so you can get 2, 3, or 4 rents per month? All right. So one, not only doing that, do I collect more rent per month, but going from 1 unit to 2, 3, or 4, can anyone guess what's the other major benefit to the investor of having more units
If one
than
is
1 unit?
vacant, they still have the other 3.
Boom. Shakira just nailed it. Gold star. When you own a 1 unit property, if it becomes vacant or that tenant decides not to pay anymore, guess what? You have no money coming in on that property. But if you buy, let's say, a 2 unit property, even one of the tenants leaves or stops paying, guess what? At least you still have one rental check coming in every month. So the hit is not as bad. Now, if you have 3 or 4 units, man, if one person is not paying or one person leaves, well, now I still have 2 or 3 more checks coming in. So again, the hit is not as bad. Does that make sense for everybody as the value of that to an investor? All right, great. Excuse me. Again, if you have any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself and put it in the chat box. But that's why I want to see if they want to exchange it for units. There's value to that. But in this case, they say, no, Robert, this property you're calling me on has great cash flow. It's paid off. They have great cash flow. I'm never selling it. Okay. So I've asked them if they wanted to sell. They said no. I've asked them if they wanted to exchange for units. They said no. All right. So the selling aspect is out the window. But remember, it's an investor. Here's a great rule of thumb when you're dealing with an investor. If they've bought one investment property, there's the chance they can buy another. So I go in, good for you. Are you interested in adding to your portfolio? Again, if they say yes, set the appointment. If they say no, keep going. Okay, now let's think about this. If they own an investment property, what else do they probably own?
Their own home.
I would assume they own their own home, right? Or even maybe another investment property. So now my last shot is, okay, well, since you own this rental, I assume you also own your primary house and maybe even other rental properties. Are you interested in selling any of those properties? So folks, this script, this is what I call maximizing your prospecting. Because this script going on absentee owners gives me 4 legit opportunities to find a deal. Okay, so if I called 10 of these a day, that's 40 opportunities to find a deal. That is what I call maximizing your prospecting. Does everybody understand what I just said? Maximizing your prospecting, 4 chances on every deal, every call?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
That's the beauty of this absentee owners. Now, I'm not going to get through this whole script every time. I understand that, but it still gives me 4 opportunities, legit opportunities to find a deal on every prospect. Okay? Hopefully that I can find a deal on there. Now, let's say even then they say, nope, Robert, I'm not interested in doing anything with those properties. All right, I've exhausted all my options. They're not interested in selling. They're not interested in exchanging. They're not interested in buying another one. They're not interested in doing anything with their other properties. I've exhausted all my options. Okay, great. Got it. When does the lease expire on this rental that I called you on? Now, here's a fun part. Why do I care when the lease expires on their rental property?
Because they need other tenants.
It might, right? Okay.
Because
So
you might be able to convert the renters into buyers.
right. Okay, good. You're both on all over this, right? And neither want to sell. So I'm asking why the lease expires. Because, like, let's say in this example, they say March. Lease expires in March. Okay. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a reminder. I'm going to put this investor in my CRM. I don't know who iPhone is, but when to follow up is a good answer. I'm going to put this investor in my CRM, and then I'm going to set an alarm. I'm going to set 2 alarms. One alarm, I'm probably going to set somewhere 90 days out, probably 90 days out. Okay. You could go to 120 days out, but I would say at least 90. And 90 days out, I'm going to go door knock that property because I know there's a tenant that lives there and I know the lease expires in 90 days. And Alan hit it right on the head when he said, they might be interested in buying. So I'm going to knock on that door. They're going to answer, say, hey, my name's Robert with Century 21. I talked to your landlord not that long ago. He mentioned that the lease on this property expires in March. I just wanted to come introduce myself to see if you were going to be renewing your lease or have you thought potentially about buying a house? So one, I've now got a buyer opportunity. So the first alarm I'm going to set is 90 days out, maybe 120. The second alarm I'm going to set is 60 days out from March. That's when I'm going to call the owner and I'm going to say, hey, last time we spoke, you said that the property at 123 Main Street, the lease expired in March. I'm just curious, has the tenant given you a notice to vacate? If they say, yes, they have. Oh, okay. Well, since they're leaving, are you thinking about potentially selling that property to cash out or exchange it? Or are you going to look for another tenant for that property? But I now know the exact right time to call them, both that tenant and the owner, to see if I can find a deal. Does that make sense for everybody? Why I'm asking when that lease expires? Because this is really important. Okay, great. So that's the script. So before I move on to the next step, does everybody understand the script? We're good on the script?
Good.
All right. Okay. So now the next thing you're going to do, and it's on this sheet, it says absentee owner spreadsheet. Absentee owner spreadsheet. And it's going to take you to here. You're going to take this spreadsheet, save it for yourself, and you're just going to have 4 columns: owner name, phone number, property address, lease expiration. Your job is to add as many of these people in these 4 columns as possible. So you call an absentee owner, you have their name, you have their phone number, you have the property address. Okay. Now, title can get you this information, by the way, or anyone that you get data from, Arch Agent, Red X, Vulcan, anything like that. They can get you all this information. Owner name, phone number, property address. You're going to ask them when the lease expires. So now, again, you're going to know exactly when to call them. Now, imagine you did this 3 times a week. Just 3 times a week. You got an owner's name, phone number, property address, and lease expiration. Just 3 times a week. Okay. How many times? 3 times. Imagine if you did this just 3 times a week. Over the next 40 weeks. Okay. Because I say the next year, but we have time off. We have holidays. We got a variety of things. So let's say over the next year, 40 weeks, you had 3 people a week. I'll never ask you to do math in public, but 40 times 3 is 120. This spreadsheet will have 120 owner names, phone numbers, addresses, and lease expiration dates, so I know exactly when to call them to see if the tenant is leaving, to see if they might be interested in selling, and I have 120 doors to knock to see if that tenant wants to be interested in buying. If I had that type of list, do you think I could generate some buyers and sellers? Yes or no?
Yes.
I got to tell you all, someday, maybe not today, but someday somebody's going to do this and it's going to make them a lot of money, right? 3 times a week. So now imagine in the next year, you have 120. 2 years from now, you have 240. 3 years from now, you have 360. And you know exactly when to call them. for the lease expiration. You know exactly when to door knock that house. This is a tremendous tool that you can use with working absentee owners, is this absentee owner spreadsheet. All right, great stuff. Okay, questions on the script and this absentee owner spreadsheet? All right, fantastic.
You're gonna put
Okay,
in the chat box so we can print it?
yes, I'm going to put all my notes in the chat box.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the last link I have on here is a free rent estimate, because this is valuable to have when you're working for investors. You need some sort of tool that gives you a free rent estimate. Okay. Now, here's what's really cool about this free rent estimate. It's on our agent resource guide. Agent resource guide. Agent resource guide. Now, you could just follow the link in the notes that I gave you, or if you go to agent resource guide, tap your resources, property management, and you scroll down, boom, free rent estimate. Click on that. You're going to enter in the address, and it's going to give you a free rent estimate. So if you have another one you want to use, that's fine. But if you don't have one, bam, here you go. Free rent estimate for you. Great tool to have. All right. Good stuff. But again, the link is right there. Right. All right. So now we're going to go through the rest of this sheet. Now, again, I'm going to share this sheet at the end, so you can just follow along and ask questions if you want. But we're going to talk again how to capture more business from real estate investors. So the first thing you need to understand is, what kind of investor are they? Are they fix and flip? Are they buy and hold? Do they want multifamily, commercial, out of state? Are they first-time investors? Are they 1031 exchange buyers? What type of investor are they? Not all investors are created equally. So if you're prospecting investors and you just treat them as such, yeah, we're thinking about buying an investment property. Oh, fantastic. Well, I can send you some great investment opportunities right now. Like, you don't even know what type of investment I'm looking for. Okay, so you got to make sure that if you want to work with investors, you need to know what type of investor they are. Okay, now you'll notice on here, these are all different types of properties: fix and flip, buy and hold, multifamily, commercial, out of state. First, but there's one right here. It's not a type of property. It just says first time. Why do you think it's important for me to know if they're a first time investor?
Because they're not that educated.
I need to be an educator. Okay, I need to slow things down. Okay, so when you're talking to a first-time investor, slow things down. Okay, buying and selling your primary residence is a lot simpler and a lot easier than an investment property. Excuse me. They'll just edit that cough out when they do the video. But when you're buying an investment property for the first time, it's a whole different ball game. So I need to know, are you an experienced investor or are you a first-time investor? Because if they're an experienced investor, okay, then I can assume a few things. Now, I don't want to assume a lot, but I can assume a few things. But if they're a first-time investor, I know I gotta slow things down and handhold a little bit. Okay, 1031 exchange. Why do I need to know if they're a 1031 exchange? What's the main reason?
Because they have to get another property within 45 days, know what they're going to buy, and within 6 months, they got to close on it. Otherwise, they have to pay capital
Right.
gains.
The timeline. Yep, Shakira's right. The timeline. Okay. So when you have, right, Doug, the timeline. So I need to know if it's 1031 exchange because there's a timeline to it. Very time sensitive. All right. And then later on, you're going to see I have all the basic notes on 1031 exchange. But if they are 1031 exchange, I know there's a time sensitive to it, and they might not even know that. So very important. All right. So first step to capturing more investors is I need to know what kind of investor I'm dealing with. All right. The second thing I wrote down here is know the lingo. And here's what rule number one: investors don't care about the floor, they care about the numbers. Okay. What do investors care about? Numbers.
Numbers.
There we go. They care about numbers. Mr. and Mrs. Investor, I have this great property for you. It's got tiles that were flown in from Italy. Okay, beautiful craftsmanship on there. Okay, they've got a fireplace on there. It was restained. And the investor's going, "What the hell? What are you doing?" So one, you're not relating to the investor, and two, they can easily see that you don't deal with investors. Okay. Yes, Emma, I will be sharing this sheet at the end of the class. Okay. When you don't know the lingo, it's easy for an investor to pick up that you don't deal with investors, which is going to push them away, they're going to push you away from working with. Okay. How do I know that? Can anyone guess how I know this? Can anyone guess how I know this? Anyone want to take a guess how I know this? Okay, here's how I know this. Because I was the person who didn't know the lingo trying to work with investors and got called out on it. That was me. Okay. I had an investor on the phone and I was talking to them, pretending like I knew what the hell I was talking about. And instantly the investor, luckily, it was a very nice guy. Okay. Because he could have just hung up on me, called me, whatever. He just said, "Hey, buddy, I appreciate your hustle, but it's also very clear to me that this is not your realm of expertise. Is there someone else in your office that might be able to help me?" Kid you not, it was a real phone call. So I had to be like, "Yeah, I got somebody." And then I had to go find the other guy in the office that was much more experienced with investors than I was. So it's easy for them to pick up that you don't know the lingo. You don't get it. Okay. So don't call investors unless you know the lingo. You know how to do that. So that's what I mean. Like if you're calling an investor going on and you're pitching the property and all the features of it, they're going, "You clearly don't work with investors." Okay. Because you led with everything except the numbers. I care about the numbers. Right? So you got to lead with the numbers. And then you got to know some basic terminology. So what I put in here, some basic terminology with some definitions. Things like cash flow, cap rate, cash on cash return, return on investment, gross rent multiplier. Oh, I forgot to add the definition to the gross rent multiplier. All right, I'll put that in there. Don't worry about it. After repair value, rehab costs, equity position, rent estimates, 1031 exchange. Okay, so you got to know this lingo. Even if you've never worked with an investor before, that's okay. As long as you know the lingo and you know what everything means, then you have a shot. Okay, because they want to know cash flow, cap rate. They want to know these things. You're going to hear these terms, and when you get stuck and go, they know that you don't work with investors. So know the lingo. Okay. And I made it really easy for you because here's the most common lingo and the definitions of it. So now you have no excuse. And I will add the gross rent multiplier. I know the definition. I just have to, or must have skipped that one. All right. But now I want to go to 1031 exchange real quick because you'll notice this is a whole section. But 1031 exchange, as Shakira kind of talked about it. What is a 1031 exchange? It's a tax strategy that allows an investor to sell an investment property and reinvest the proceeds into another qualifying investment property while deferring capital gains taxes. Okay, anyone ever dealt with an investor who says, "I don't want to pay capital gains tax"? All right, we hear that all the time. Well, how do you get around doing that? Well, you don't really ever get around doing it, this is really important. You don't get around paying capital gains taxes. At some point, the tax is due. Okay? Death and taxes. But you can defer it. You don't have to pay it today, Mr. or Mrs. Investor. You can pay it later, right? You can just pay the bill later. But there's certain things that you have to do. You have to sell this property and purchase another property with the proceeds. All right. Now, a couple just basic rules on 1031 exchange. The property must be for investment or business use. So, what does that mean? Yes, rental property, commercial building, vacant land held for investment. No, primary residence or second home used primarily for personal enjoyment. Okay. So I have a primary residence. Can I do it? All right. Let's have some fun. All right. I have a lake house. There's no tenants in it. It's just a house that my wife and I use, a couple times a year. We have a lake house up in Lake Arrowhead. I want to sell it. Can I sell it and do a 1031 exchange? You can either unmute yourself or put a 1
Yes.
if it's a yes, 2 if it's a no.
Yes.
No.
1 says I have a lake house that's not tenant occupied. My wife and I just use it a couple times a year to go up to the lake for holidays and stuff like that. Can I use a 1031 exchange on that property? Put a 1 for yes or a 2 for no, or unmute yourself.
No.
Actually, no, unless you rent it
No.
for 14 days.
Yes, the answer is no. Good job. Good job, everybody. The answer is no. Second homes that are primarily used for personal enjoyment cannot be used as a 1031 exchange. All right, how about this one? I own a commercial building. I own the commercial building. I want to get out of this building. I want to sell it, but I don't want to pay capital gains. Can I use a 1031 exchange on a commercial building? 1 is yes, 2 is no, or unmute yourself.
Yes.
Can I use a
Yes.
commercial building for 1031 exchange?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. I see a lot of yeses in there. The answer is yes. Commercial buildings. I can use a commercial building for a 1031 exchange. All right. Let's see. How about I got 2 more for you. It's vacant land. I got vacant land. Okay. That's not being used. Okay, I don't have a house. I'm not building a house on it. I don't use it for any of my own personal business, but I want to sell it. Can I do it on vacant land?
Yes.
1 for yes, 2 for no, or unmute yourself.
Because you don't live on vacant.
That's right. The answer is yes. I can do a 1031 exchange on vacant land. All right, last one for you. Now, I haven't even gone over this note yet, but we're just going to have some fun anyways. I have a primary residence. Now, primary residence, I have a primary. So obviously you would think, oh, primary, you can't. But if I sell my primary residence and buy an investment property, can I do a 1031 exchange for that? Can I sell my primary residence and buy an investment property and do a 1031 exchange?
No.
Yes, no. All right, the answer is no. Good job, everybody. Woo! Dun, 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 dun. I don't have any prizes, but if I did, I'd give them to you. All right, good job. So so rental properties, commercial buildings, vacant land held for investments, you can. Primary residence, second home, you can't. Now it has to be like for like, meaning that I have to be able to. I'm selling investment property. The next property has to be for investment purposes as well. Okay. So if I sell a single family rental, I can buy an apartment building. If I sell vacant land, I can buy a retail center. So it doesn't have to be the same type of property. It just has to be for investment purposes or business purposes. So if I'm selling a single family house that I'm renting out, I don't have to buy another single family house. I can buy another type of property as long as it's used for investment purposes. Okay, it just has to be used for investment purposes. All right. Then you keep scrolling down the list. You can't take possession of the sale proceeds. As Shakira mentioned earlier, you have 45 days to identify replacement properties. You have 180 days to complete the sale. right? So I'm not going to go over too many more details on that, but you need to know the 1031 exchange policy. That's very, very important. All right. The next thing I wrote down on working with investors, be a market super expert. Market super expert. So what do I mean? Which zip codes or neighborhoods have the best appreciation, the worst appreciation? Where are rents increasing or decreasing? What neighborhoods are more tenant occupied? What local regulations could affect profit? You need to know these things. Because if I'm an investor, I am a fix and flip investor. If I'm a fix and flip investor, what between appreciation and rents, what is the most important thing to me if I'm a fix and flip investor? Do I
The
care more about
timeline?
appreciation or rents?
Appreciation.
I care more about appreciation, right? So if you know your investor is a fix and flip investor, like we mentioned earlier, and they're going, hey, I'm looking in this area, and you're going, wait, hold on a second here. Actually, in the last 12 months, the average price or the average price per square foot in this area has gone down. This might not be your best fix and flip area, Mr. and Mrs. Investor. Okay. But this over here, one area over, is up a little bit. Now, if it's a fix and flip investor, they're not hanging on to the property, which means that they don't care so much about the location in terms of because they're not going to have it long term. They're looking at what is the best appreciation for me. Doesn't matter if it's in a good area, a bad area, an area that's, a couple blocks over, a different county. They're just looking at appreciation. Now, if I have an investor who's a hold investor, I might want to go somewhere where rents are increasing. Now, I still want to know best or worst appreciation because, I don't want to buy an investment property that goes down in value. But if I'm holding it long term, ultimately prices will go up. So I want to know where rents are increasing or decreasing. Why would I want to know what neighborhoods are more tenant occupied? If I'm an investor, why would I want to know what neighborhoods are more tenant occupied? Anyone want to guess? The reason I want to know if it's more tenant occupied is because there's a saying Neil's wife has a saying called, it says it's not an only child, meaning that if somebody's doing something, they're not doing it by themselves, right? There's always someone else doing it. So what neighborhoods are more tenant occupied? If I'm an investor and I'm a hold investor, purchase and hold investor, I want to purchase in areas where it's more tenant occupied because there's clearly something about that neighborhood that is attractive to tenants. Okay, so if I'm a hold investor, if you said, hey, this area over here, 33% of the homes are tenant occupied. This area over here, it's 10%. I'm going, I don't want to try to rent a house out where there's only 10% are tenant occupied. That might be a tough area for me to rent. 33%, clearly tenants like this neighborhood for whatever reason. Maybe it's the walkability or something like that. I want to buy in that. I want to buy and hold in that area. Okay, so I want to know what neighborhoods are more tenant occupied, and then local regulations, who has rent control, things like that. So you got to be a market super expert. All right, now what tool do you have at your disposal in your MLS that can easily solve a couple of these issues?
Well,
What
Info
tool?
Sparks where you live,
InfoSparks.
but where
Yay.
we are, we don't have that. We have something else. Better.
Okay, well, whatever you have. Okay, if you have InfoSparks, use InfoSparks. If you don't have it, because I know some of the Northern California MLSs don't have it, but I put InfoSparks in the chat box. If you have InfoSparks, great way to do it. All right, number 4, play Know Your Investor. Play Know Your Investor. For each investor in your database, make sure you know the following: type of investor, see above, right, as I mentioned earlier, their price range, their property type, the geographic area, financing or cash, desired return. The better you know your database, the faster you can match deals. just having a database of investors has some value, but not a lot. But if you took everyone in your database that's an investor, or you purchased a list of investors, or got a list of investors from your title rep, I need to know these things, right? You can even create a marketing piece that says, know your investor, right? And ask these things because now I need to know, or I'm sorry, now I know when to call them when I have an opportunity for them. Right? I got to try to show that I'm valuable to them. So if I have an investor and I know that they're looking between 750 and 850 and a single family residence in a 10-mile radius of San Luis Obispo, right? And they're paying cash, then I'm going and I find a property that's a fixer that's in that price range. I'm going, man, I got to call them. Right? Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, how you doing today? It's Robert, Century 21. Hey, look. Based on what you told me, I have a property for you. It's 800,000. It's a single family residence. It's 10 miles within 10 miles of San Luis Obispo. And you can buy, and since you're paying cash, it's perfect for you because you probably can't get any financing on it, so you won't have much competition. Are you interested? Imagine making that phone call to an investor as opposed to, hey, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, so I have this great investment opportunity. It's up in San Francisco. It's $1.4 million. And they're going, yeah, dude, like, it doesn't check any of my boxes. Like spam. You're spam. I'm not answering your phone calls. If you want people to answer your phone calls, know them, know what they want. And so every time they see your number come up, they're going, he or she must have something good for me. Play know your investor. It's a fast way to match deals, right? Put deals together. Be that person. All right. For the off-market investors, right? Everyone has those investors that go, I want something off-market, which I think is stupid, but that's okay. For the off-market investors, well, where do I find off-market deals? Well, you can connect with wholesalers, okay? NODs would be an opportunity for off-market. Why are NODs an opportunity for off-market investors?
Because they're desperate to sell.
They might have to sell really fast. An investor might be able to swoop in and do something in 2 weeks. So NODs would be an opportunity, kind of off-market investors, finding distressed properties, and finding the owner. So when you're out previewing property, because I know all of you are previewing property every day. I know you are. I know you are. My heart hurts just saying it out loud because I know you're not.
That's a
Anyways.
joke, right?
When you're out previewing property and you find a home that's in distress, reach out to your title rep and say, hey, here's the address. Can you get me the owner's information? And then see if they might be thinking about selling off market. Contact other investors. Sometimes other investors want to sell it off market because they don't want the tenant to know that they're selling the property, which again is stupid. But again, I'm just, don't mind me over here. You can network with property managers. Property managers obviously know investors, so they might have access to anyone who's trying to sell something off market, or contact old expireds and canceleds. Why? Because if it's an old expired or canceled, they might not want to go back on the market. But if you have a buyer that fits what they're looking for, you might have an opportunity. All right. So some off market ideas. All right. Create an investor marketing plan. So you want to work with investors, show investors that you know what you're doing. So how do you do that? You create an investor marketing plan. Now, this is stuff you could do as flyers, postcards, social media, emails, whatever. But things like top 5 cash flow markets this month, best flip opportunities, rental property of the week, monthly investor market update, video walkthrough with renovation ideas, right? Just things to be top of mind with investors and show that you know what you're doing. All right. So again, you can get with our marketing team. They can create some marketing content for you. But if you want to work with investors, the more that they see you as someone who does investment properties, the better chance you have. All right. Where to find investors? All right, Robert. Well, you're telling me all these things working with investors. Where do I find these damn people? Well, like I said, title companies like WFG Title can get you all that data, or you can go to data services company like Arch Agent, Vulcan 7, RedX, things like that. Verbal is better in every possible way. So what do I mean by that? It's easy to get a list of all the absentee owners, of which you probably will have to mail them something unless their home address is also closed. You can door knock. but it's more beneficial if you pay a few bucks to get some phone numbers because verbal is better in every way possible. Okay. The faster I can have a verbal conversation with them, the faster I can find a deal or get them in my database or play Know Your Investor, all those things. Verbal is better in every way possible. All right. There you could find real estate investor groups, Facebook, things like that. There's investor groups, property management groups, again, only because property managers know investors. Chamber of Commerce events always has investors. They also always have a bunch of real estate agents, so go at your own risk. And business networking groups. You can find business networking groups, on Google. Just go to Google and go business networking groups, and there's opportunities for investors and things like that. But this is where you can find investors. But if nothing else, just do that and all your problems are solved. All right. Be the I have a guy. All right. Who here has somebody that always knows somebody to fix everything? Okay. I got a guy. I got a guy for a guy. Right? You know someone who's always the I've got a guy. You need to be the I have a guy for the investors. So things like loan officers that work with investors. Now 21st Century Lending has you covered there, but hard money lenders. Investors, sometimes as an investor, you need a hard money lender. You want to purchase a property, but you don't have the funds. You need a bridge loan. You need something like that. So you need to know a hard money lender. You need to know contractors, CPAs, right? Property managers. Now we also have property management companies. So that one's also solved. Insurance agents. Why insurance agents? Because they need to know what's the insurance going to be on an investment property. All right. Is it in a fire zone that's going to affect their profitability? Because remember, it's all about numbers. It's all about numbers. So where I live right now is a high fire zone, which I feel like is most of California right now. But I live in a high fire zone. So the homeowner's insurance cost in my area is really high. So if you're an investor trying to buy in my area, well, you need to factor that in because if you're charging this much rent and you're thinking, oh, I just have this, this, or this, well, now you got to factor in the homeowner's insurance. I'm not homeowner's insurance. Yeah, homeowner's insurance might be a whole different thing. All right. Attorneys, handymen. So you need to have contacts for all these people. If you don't have contacts for some of these people, reach out to other agents and say, who's your contact for this? Or what I've done in the past, true story, is go to Yelp, find someone in that category that has a lot of 5-star reviews, call them, kind of quasi interview them, and just say, hey, look, I'm going to put you as my preferred whatever. Okay. And you can do those things. All right. But be the I have a guy. All right. Last couple points here because we're right at 1 o'clock. Think beyond the purchase. Think beyond the purchase. So other than just seeing if they want to buy or sell, every so often put together a CMA for them. How about having a 5-year expansion plan, 10-year plan conversation with them, an exit strategy discussion, right? They're investors. So they're not going to say, I'm going to die in this property. All right. Like you get with some of these homeowners, they're investors. So there's a chance they're either at some point going to expand. They want to expand their portfolio or they're going to want to shrink their portfolio. So be the person who's having those conversations with them and coming up with the strategies for them. All right. So let me give you an example because we're just about done. Let me give you an example of having that plan. So imagine you go to an investor and you say, hey, look, what's your 5-year expansion plan? And they say, actually, what I want to do is I want to shoot big. I want to buy, I've got, a couple of single family homes. What I want to do is I want to keep those, but in the next 5 years, I want to shoot big. I want to buy an 8-unit property. Okay, let's go. So then you say, all right, well, let's give me the areas. What are you looking for? Blah, blah. You find an 8-unit property that matches the description today. Now, I know it's going to be a lot more expensive than this, but just for simple math, let's call it $1 million. Okay. And they say it's $1 million. Okay. Now that's today. Now you go to your lender and you say, what's the minimum down payment for this type of property for an investment? And I think let's call it 25%. They say, okay. All right. So 25%, you need 250,000 down to be able to buy this property. Now let's assume, whatever, a 4 or 5% appreciation over that next 5-year plan. So let's say that now that property is going to be 1.1 million, and now you're going to have to put down whatever, $300,000. Okay. So you need $300,000 over the next 5 years to put down on this house. How much do you have right now? We got about 100. Okay, great. So you need another $200,000. Yeah. 5 years is 60 months. So if I took 200,000 divided by 60, I need about $3,500 a month, give or take, right? Can you put $3,500 a month away every single month for the next 5 years to get that 200 grand? And they say, yeah, we can do it. Okay, great. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the bank. I want you to open up a savings account. You're going to call it my 8-unit savings account. And then here's what you're going to do. On the first of every month, you're going to transfer $3,500 into that account. And then I'm going to be your real estate accountability partner. I'm going to call you on the second of every month to make sure that you did it. You're going to be okay if you do that? Yeah, let's go. Okay. So now the next month, I call him second. Did you just put that $3,500 in? Yes, it did. Fantastic. Let me know if you need anything. Next month. Every month for 5 years, I'm calling them on the second to see if I transfer $3,500. Now, first of all, forget about even them buying that house. Is any other real estate agent doing that for them? Yes or no? No, not a chance. Which means I am their real estate agent for anything and everything they do and all their friends and family that they ever refer, because I'm showing an investment in them. Now, 5 years from now, because I plan on being in real estate in 5 years and I'm going to need a $1.1 million sale, guess what? 5 years from now, they say, hey, Robert, we did it. We got the $200,000 in the account. Let's go ahead and buy that property. Great. Worst case scenario, they say, you know what? We've decided we don't want to buy it. But because of you, we have $200,000 in that savings account on top of whatever interest they've earned, which is probably not very much in banks. Like, that's thinking beyond the purchase, having those types of conversations. They're going to use you forever and get referrals and all kinds of things. All right. And then I wrote down some keynotes here. Lead with data, not emotion. Investors value speed and certainty. Become a trusted advisor, not just a transaction counter. One investor relationship could lead to multiple transactions over many years. Your expertise and network are often more valuable than finding a single property. All right, so let me stop here for a second. Questions on anything I went over today, because I know it was a lot. All right, great. All right, so look, I'm going to put this in the chat box, these notes. But as I mentioned at the very beginning, yes, iPhone 1031 exchange has a 45-day limit to identify a property, 45 days, 180 days to close. All right, so my notes are in the chat box. So remember, investors occupy 33% of transactions right now, either on the buyer side or the seller side. That's 1 out of every 3 transactions. So as I said during my State of the Market tour, do you think 1 out of every 3 transactions comes from an expired? No. 1 out of 3 transactions come from a for sale by owner? No. 1 out of 3 transactions comes from investors. You want right now business? Go call and work investors. And I just gave you the blueprint on how to do it.
Can you
All right,
repost it? Sorry, I don't know what
yep,
happened
you got
there.
it.
Thank you so much, Mark.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, take those notes, and I assume that everyone's going to be calling their WFG title reps to get that investor list. And if you're not, then I don't know what the hell you're doing. All right, everybody, let's go. Let's make it happen. Got opportunities out there. If you need anything from me, let me know. I'm here. Let's go. Let me be your energizer bunny and your wake-up call. Come on now. Let's go have a great week. All right, whoever has open mic at 1 o'clock, floor is yours. Emma, yes, this was recorded.